now again for somebody completely different, with a completely different angle for looking at spaces and the future of spaces, with a completely different background. I met Ola Ahlvarsson when I visited a new co-working space in Amsterdam called Epicenter. I thought, yet another co-working space. We must be nearing saturation point when it comes to co-working spaces, because they are like mushrooming everywhere in the city of Amsterdam, and I must say, every city I visit, there's a lot of co-working spaces. So what makes this space different? Then he gave a talk about Epicenter, and I was totally mesmerized. Not only by his story, also by his background. I'm sure he will tell you a little bit about that. It's quite surprising. And what makes his co-working spaces different than other co-working spaces is that these co-working spaces are not so much about sharing space, but they are intended to promote the sharing of ideas and foster collaboration between people. But that's me talking. Let's listen to the story of Ola Ahlvarsson.
Hello, everybody. Fantastic to be here. I'm Ola. Does this work? Yeah, it works. I'm Ola. I just realized I'm probably the person in the room that knows least about design. I'm very interested in it, but luckily I'm going to speak about something else. I'm going to speak about how I think that there is a completely new role for spaces in the creation of value, not only for the people that sits there, but for the businesses they're in. My background is that I'm a serial entrepreneur. The last almost 30 years, I've been trying to build companies. To date, I've been part of starting 22 companies, fucked up 4 of them completely. Some of them have become international leaders, and almost always it's been at the intersection between new technology and an industry I know very little about. I do have a shady past. I was actually a kickboxing world champion before that. So this is the day in the life of a martial artist. Usually half-naked Eastern European man wants to beat you up, and this is a sort of a bad day at the office. You don't want to lift from the floor like that. So why am I showing you this when you all know that Swedes never brag? Well, it's quite interesting. As a kickboxer, you know that on Saturday in 2 weeks, you're going to get severely beaten up. You don't know how much, and even if you win, that fact holds. And you can't eat because you need to lose weight for your weight division. And you're super afraid, but you can't tell anybody because you're a tough kickboxer. So for about 10, 15 years of my life, I've lived every day beaten up without food and very afraid. And still, I was super happy and excited. And I pondered a lot about that. And I think there is something very important to be learned from that. If you have a vision in full HD, if you know why you're doing something and you really like that destination, what happens on the way is less important. And if you can instill that in a project or in a team or in yourself for that matter, it's a lot more exciting. And that's what we see many of the best entrepreneurs have in common. So today, I'm one of the founders of what is called Epicenter. This is our Stockholm building. It's 32,000 square meters. And it is not a co-working space, even though it's easier for people to say that. But it is a digital innovation house where large companies can create things really, really fast as if they were startups. And where scale-ups, not startups, can grow dramatically. And the building wraps around their needs, not around selling square meters. Because we really believe that digitization is one of the most important things to get right for any society or city, because whoever creates the digital ventures also decides what's ethical, programs the AIs, designs the agenda. And there's some really worrying things happening around the world in the realms of technology. And only by being very good at innovation, I think we can decide how the future looks. There's about 27,000 co-working spaces in the world that are in the making, that are being created. And as you said, coming up here, do you really need another one? Does the world really need another one? And the way we look upon it, we think maybe half of the creative cast will be working in some sort of flexible environment. And the way to understand it is to see that one flexible environment doesn't compete with the other one more than a building competes with all other buildings. There will be some players offering flexibility. They take the 15-year lease and you can have it for 3 months and there's nothing on top. Others will offer services, others will offer technology, others will offer other things making your life easier or making it more flexible. What we try to do is something completely different. We want to design a space and an environment that makes your business a lot better. We've never talked to somebody in charge of facility management. We've never discussed with the person who would normally say yes or no to an office. The question from anybody moving in or being member or being part of our community has been strategic and had a business reason, not a space reason. We open up in Oslo, we have a nice building there, in Helsinki, and as you heard, we're also in Amsterdam. We've sneak previewed, and we have a wonderful building of about 11,000 square meters. In these buildings, we play around with technology. So if you don't want to go to work, you can go there as a robot. We have transcranial stimulators that can, for instance, see the level of interaction or how well you're listening when I'm speaking to you. Or it can also cure hangovers. Supposedly, there's a big test team trying that right now in Sweden. We have BTMs, Bitcoin tellers, instead of ATMs. And it's a place for brave leaders where we have a playful relationship to technology that then can be turned into strategies and impact. This is the real estate owner, Mats Hederos. Here, he's getting a chip surgically implanted into his hand, because you can also have that as an option instead of keys. It also controls printers and a bunch of other things. We can also now get train tickets to it, to the Epicenter partnership with the train authorities. And when he came at the launch of Epicenter, he came with the keys ceremoniously, and instead we had this tattoo artist implant a chip in his hand with a scalpel. And the guy had a t-shirt saying, "Of course it fucking hurts." And this was filmed, and it went out in media. And to date, we've had 8 million people watching our office opening on YouTube. Christian fanatics, that's not usually the case, but they thought we started Armageddon. He marks his minions on the left hand. So we had demonstration and police support outside because they thought we started Armageddon. How do you start something like this, and why do you do it? Well, we didn't start this because we wanted to be in the real estate industry. We started it because we think that if you have an epicenter of digital innovation, that will then radiate out into the city where it is, and it will create better businesses and ultimately a better society. So we grouped around this massive transformative purpose, and we just invited others driving with vision and passion rather than doing what has always been done in the industry. We filled about 32,000 square meters in 6 weeks, more or less. I don't know if that's been done before, but how was it done is more interesting. We sat down with a real estate owner and said, who would you rather have in your building? Who would be the perfect tenants in the world? Oh, we would like to have Google, we would like to have, and they were dreaming aloud. And we went and we sat down with all of them, and we workshopped around what was most important for them. And they said the same things. They said they want to have the right talents, they want to have the right, innovation, they want to have a learning environment, and a bunch of other things. And then we just followed that trail to the most interesting people to hire. And we workshop with them around their needs. They said things like great food, I want interesting people to be in the building. It was completely different things than being called CEO and having marble in a corner office. That never came up. It was about purpose, it was about environment, it was about equality, it was about completely different things. And based on that, and step by step, we developed and co-created the concept while asking everybody that contributed to sign a letter of intent if they wanted to be part and moving in. Then Mats went up to his pension fund owners and said, we're not going to have tenants, we're going to call them members, we're going to have short contracts, it's going to be great, and we're going to rebuild this as well, and it's going to be expensive, but it's going to be really, really good investment. And his board said, before we fire you, do you have any last words? And he said, yeah, here's 6 times more letter of intents than we have square meter price. Should we talk to an architect so we can show these guys how it will look so they can sign? And they did that and everybody signed on. So they never took any risk at all in this building, more than a month and some drawings. But we thought bigger than that. 10 times more square meters were purchased, and this was then what was called the urban escape, where the whole part of the city was recreated, and now that is by far the most attractive place to be, and the rents have almost tripled, and this is 3.5 years. And the question that we asked was not how do we fill the building or how do we get Google to sign in, is how do we create the best place for innovation? And a day at Epicenter could be anything from lectures, trainings, events, social things happening. You're testing technology. You're doing a bunch of things. You're having your kids, you're having your kids' kindergarten come visit. A bunch of different things are happening, and it's a by invitation only environment where we curate the community based on who's doing interesting things. The parole is innovation with impact, not I have an idea it's going to be great. It's innovation with impact. So accomplished companies and people. And we mix that with international speakers, thinkers, doers, maniacs, and a bunch of different people. And that becomes a stage that others want to be part of. So we get paid when sort of Eric Schmidt, Google's then chairman, is at Epicenter and speaks with a former prime minister. Then that is a revenue for us, but it's also something for our members. And when that spreads, you have speakers from far and beyond coming and wanting to do things. So it becomes a TED-like stage where we have a business model attached to them. And then there's also innovation labs, as I mentioned. So large companies can build things at very, very fast speed outside the immune system of a large company. So any employee in the bank we work with can come up with an idea, try to get through the needle's eye and sit at Epicenter and work with that idea at warp speed. Or you can have that as a space to meet other entrepreneurs and companies and do things at warp speeds. We have a fertility lab that created 82 kids together with Merck. We don't know anything about fertility, but we can orchestrate the innovation process for them. And we play around with new technology. As I said before, we eat crickets, or we try a lot of haptic things, or we had the first robotic romantic companions coming over and workshopping with people. And it was sort of concluded by some futurists that in 2030, over 50% would have had sex with robots. But it was sort of more interesting to understand that people are already falling in love with robots. And that sooner or later, as AI progresses, we might have to deal with equal marriage rights, or what will happen with that, and what is love, and what is companionship. We have a no assholes policy. So if you don't behave or contribute, or if you're an arrogant bastard, you're asked to leave your office, move out from the community. And just by having that makes people behave a little bit differently. We're very, very far from the sort of the Steve Jobs kind of smart guys that knows it all and screams at people, and it's cool because they're so successful. And I think that's something that is extremely important. And we also believe that everybody has talent. I don't know if you have seen, if you know what these guys have in common. They all worked at Burger King, which is kind of cool. And what if you can, I get stressed out if I go into a place like that. I was like, who's the president, who's the singer? But if you can if you can get that power that is inherent in all of us to flourish by way of designing a community, a context, a way where people feel safe, and a belief that everybody has talent, different things happen. A very common thing is that a company comes in, large company, and they're like, oh, my colleagues are so boring, this is not really, and then you see these boring colleagues in a different environment, and they work wonders in creativity because they've never been challenged before. And when that goes from having the opportunity to becoming a responsibility to be part of innovation, the clock speed changes dramatically, and you get innovation with impact. So the innovation labs, they are 14 times more efficient than industry average. I mean, the whole Epicenter is an innovation lab case. And the buildings are bringing in 2 to 3 times more money than it did when we started working with them. And it continues to grow because the members are sitting in London or here or in the next building, but they still want to be members. And it's orchestrated so that the scale-ups that grows really fast, they move into the next door building, but they remain members because they want to be part of the community. So it's a completely different model than the traditional real estate model. So some of the things we've learned so far, if I want to distill some of the things, and hopefully something will be useful for you. The role of design, as told by somebody who doesn't know a lot about design. We started with a first building of 8,000 square meters and tested the concept. The problem was that our real estate partner couldn't give us money to redecorate it. So the only thing we could do was to make some furniture that mixed with the under construction, completely trashy environment, looking something like this. And we didn't think it would be this bad, but it was. So when people came in, we had this thing that we said. They walked around and it was Emperor's New Clothes, and it's like, is this digital innovation now? Yeah, if you're over 30, you don't get it, right? No, I like it. And we did that, and we won a design award in Sweden, which was kind of interesting. But none, and this was the sad news for all the designers, none of the people we interviewed held that higher than all the other things that we could offer, which was who's there, what do I learn, what about technology, how does it drive my business, who inspires me, and how's the food. It was completely different. So a lot of the traditional design offers we had for the next larger building, they were completely shooting besides what was interesting or even relevant for what we wanted to create. But I think there's a new role of design. I think there's a new role of design to be hand in hand with an ever-morphing community of people and technology and needs. So I don't think it should be fixed. I think it should be a starting point. And the people we want to work with, they would continuously put new experiences in. And we have safaris where you can have an event, you have a safari, you try technology, you try spaces, you try places, you do things. And somebody that can contribute to those safaris and contribute to wanting to making the community want to be in that space or place, that I think is a huge opportunity for design. We also learned that innovation comes with an attitude. I love this guy. He's going to give also the money to cancer research. And when we're asked, he was asked, how do you grow your business? He said, I suppose I'll find a bigger road. Kind of has it all. But if you look at startups versus scale-ups, everybody's very excited about startups. The statistics is that only 4% of all startups make 500,000 euros in sales or more after 3 years. That's 4%. Only 0.4 do 10 million after 5 years. So it's in fact easier to be a rap star in Holland statistically than to be a scale-up entrepreneur. But yet we spend all these times with ideas that are, you shouldn't spend any time with them. Think of it as the music industry. Somebody can sing a song that has no value until people like that song and it starts growing. So the opportunity is to work with scale-ups. That's why we're focused on scale-ups, not startups. And these companies grow fast and they've found a market fit. And we have labs for these. So now we've collected 3,000 scale-ups that work with each other and help each other, connect with the large companies, and then work in this environment. One of them we started ourselves in an industry we knew nothing about. Games for girls that are 8 to 14-year-old. We just saw that there was a gap in the space, and we created what is now the world's largest game, Star Stable, for girls that like horses. There's 16 million girls riding around right now in this world in 230 countries. And for 100,000 payers, that's 10 million euros in sales. So we created a company that is worth more than all of Epicenter because we had the soil to create that. Exponential technologies. You've probably heard the rhetorics on exponential technologies. They get twice as smart at half the price every year. So if I walk linear 30 meters here, 30 steps, it's 30 meters. But if I walk exponentially 30 steps, it's 1 billion meters. So what if our technologies continue to do that? They always have. Then 30 years from now, our mobile phone would be 1 billion times smarter, our self-driving cars, our buildings, So the world we envision is not going to look as we think, because we think about it linearly, most of us. It's going to be completely bonkers. It's going to be completely different than now. And just having that humbleness towards technology and curiosity, I think is a good starting point. And I love this example when if you asked Siri, your phone, 2014, I'm going to jump off a bridge and die, it said there are 4 bridges close to you. Right? Now it calls the suicide hotline, prevention hotline. And if you build companies based on these technologies, they grow very differently, and they have very different needs. The trained eye can see there's something different with them, right? And they don't want to have a 15-year-old lease, and they don't want to have exactly the same now as in 3 years. They're working at completely different speeds. And if you look at the real estate industry, and if you look at companies like WeWorks or Notel for that reason, Notel opened 86 sites in New York alone the last 18 months. They will have completely different needs and want to interact with you very, very differently. And to be part of that conversation and to understand that the DNA of these companies, I think, is a key future skill. This is interesting. This is the number of unicorns, $1 billion companies created in 5 years. And it's deliberately old, because here you see Spotify and Airbnb. Can you imagine how much they changed their industries? And what all these companies are going to do. And it's an exponential curve. So once again, I want to drive home the point. The future is going to look very, very different than what we're experiencing today. And the large companies today, they are desperate to innovate. And how can they do that? And I think all organizations need to challenge existing truths, but more so than ever, large companies need to do it. It's very seldom the music industry that comes up with iTunes. It's very seldom the incumbent that creates the value. And how do you then challenge chosen truths? Well, I would imagine that in every industry, every company, there are a bunch of chosen truths. For instance, if you look at smoking on airlines, we stopped with that 1988. This is a non-smoking service in London Heathrow. How long are we going to say that? 100 years, 50 years, 1,000 years? When is somebody going to say, we get it? We're not going to smoke. Or in Sweden, there's a sport called bandy. And bandy, there are 4 nations playing it. And it's 5 minutes on television during the sports every evening. And nobody plays it. I've asked every group for 10 years, does anybody play bandy? Nobody plays bandy. So I made a calculation that you can call, or you can even Uber to everybody that cares about bandy and tell them what happened in the game, rather than having a TV crew and broadcasting, and it would be cheaper. And then you have this, and it's never on television. It's Counter-Strike in the globe arena, 16,000 people, hundreds of millions of people watching throughout the world. Nobody seems to notice. And it's these undercurrents that the ones that can pick up and champion, understand the undercurrents, they can be very, very successful. But that requires intrapreneurship. An intrapreneur is somebody that has a job, but is a change maker and want to create and do something completely different. Somebody prepared to steal office supply at home to bring it to work. And entrepreneurship is one of the most important things on our planet. I set out some years ago to write a book about entrepreneurs. And I went around the world and I interviewed super entrepreneurs. I could interview Richard Branson and others. But I realized that even more important are the intrapreneurs. The change makers that never get the applause or the options or the big checks. But they just create and change. And when they do that, if they do it in a large organization, it has so much more impact than 2 guys eating noodles in a basement and then they're selling their company. Do you know Caterpillar? They do digging machines. Could you imagine you're at the board meeting of Caterpillar and somebody says, how's Finland going? Yeah, cool, Finland is going really well, we're digging and digging. And Poland, Poles give very good too. And country by country, everybody's super happy. And then somebody said, could I add something? Yeah. Could we make shoes? Yeah, of course, let's make shoes. And then they create a shoe brand. How did that even happen? Who are the people that think that differently or that can do something completely different than what took the company where they are? And that entrepreneurial talent, and then I don't know how they made a business plan out of it, but somehow they pulled that through, is what we try to foster at Epicenter. So if you can get entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, and in the middle of that, you learn a lot, and then you play around with technology in a curated environment. And not to be forgotten, the food is extremely important. So we have the guys cooking the Nobel dinner and so forth in the Stockholm office, and we have two of the most famous chefs in other locations and so forth. Because then everybody wants to come where you are, and that fuels the community, builds more and more events and so forth. You can drive completely different business values. So here we are. We're together with OVG and Edge, that built the Edge here in Amsterdam, and Edge Technologies. We've created this wonderful building. And what I would also like to invite you to do is come check it out. There is an invitation from us here, together with Frame, that if you email me, ola@result.com, we'll give you a month. You are a free VIP member for a month. You can come hang out and see what it triggers and what you can do within that space. And it's semi-launched. A lot of companies needed to move in earlier, but we're going to have a bigger launch during the spring here in Amsterdam. And what we hope to be able to contribute and do is what we did in the markets we started earlier. Be a needle pad for a lot of interesting thoughts, people, and businesses that further the growth of society here in the digital space. And I really think we can nail it based on where we are right now. But as with all change making, entrepreneurship, it also comes with taking risk. So this is kind of how it feels like, leaving the safety of an industry we all know, an office where we are, where facts are there, and you venture out into the unknown. You smell the cheese there, there's something there.
There is wonder in most everything I see.
Maybe it's in an innovation lab, or maybe it's your scale-up taking off. Here the entrepreneurs start being a little bit more self-assured and maybe even arrogant. Let's take some more risk. I know it. The others don't get it. The old dinosaurs. Painful as it is, I've almost never been in a company or venture that hasn't been in a situation where shit, it doesn't work, and it's tough, and you never think you'll survive. But these guys, and what we try to foster in Epicenter, is an attitude where you sort of just come back and you try it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ola. And thank you very much for giving this invitation to the people in the space here to become members of Epicenter Amsterdam. Epicenter Amsterdam.
Epicenter Amsterdam, yes.
Or also Stockholm and other places.
No, any place you would like to come, you come check it out.
Because I'm pretty sure that many of the people here in the space don't live or work in Amsterdam. My question to you is, if these people sign up for a membership, and I'm pretty sure there are no assholes here, so that's one box that we can check. How do you curate these members? How do you select in the end who is actually allowed to become a lasting member and who's not?
I think that it is not as intricate or as exclusive as one first might think. But it's people that are doing interesting things in interesting industries and interesting companies. If somebody just wants to raise capital for their startup and they're bugging everybody, or somebody just wants to sell Indian outsourcing to everybody, and that's the reason for being in the community, they're probably not the right for our community. And the way we meet, because a lot of people can sit in the same building, go up and down the same elevator, they never speak. But since we have all these knowledge sessions and all the speakers coming in, you really meet and you workshop and you start to get to know each other. And then we have a bunch of things where we curate that we actually meet with each other. You can, for instance, meet somebody and have lunch that have exactly the same values as yourself based on an app that we have, or totally opposite value of yourself. And you can book that lunch as well if you think that's more interesting. But it's kind of like you would have a dinner at your home. It wouldn't be open for everybody, but you wouldn't sort of have a set guidance where that person can come and that person couldn't. It's organic, but it has an intelligence to it.
Okay, I think that's not scaring anybody. And the next thing I would like to know from you is, would you be open to architects and designers? Because you speak a lot about tech-oriented scale-ups, but in architecture and design, unfortunately, I don't think we can speak about scale-ups. So would I be welcome?
Absolutely, and I think that I disagree, because we don't know the new business models of architecture. We don't know the new business models of design. We don't know where this is going, because so many things are changing. If you go 100 years back, somebody who was a musician was somebody who was sitting in a room commissioned to sit like this in Vienna. There were 4 people there playing and there were 10 people listening. What is an artist today? So as technology changes, business models changes, the needs around. So I think that, but if I would be an architect or somebody that creates and interacts with spaces, I would have almost like a newspaper or a TV station would have publishing schedules for new things. That's how I would look upon it, rather than delivering it, giving the keys, and on to the next project. It's kind of like learning will change. We'll finish school at 20 or 22. Now I think we will go to school. There'll be lifelong learning. How is that going to look? Some educational companies will be 10 times the size as the biggest ones today, because we will have to learn all our lives.
You're a very optimistic person. I would like to stick to your optimism before we enter the break. Thank you very much, Ola.
Thank you so much.